So last weekend I was at Play Expo Manchester, and this time it wasn't an event city, it was a new venue, Manchester Central. This was, as the name would suggest, much more central, so it was far easier nipping out for food or to go for drinks in the evenings, but I'll talk more about the social side on camera after a look round the event itself. A lot of people come to these events for the traders, but personally I think that the dedicated retro markets are better for buying, and I don't buy much retro these days anyway, to be honest. The number of traders perhaps wasn't as big as some previous expos, but there was a decent selection. Game prices were reasonably high, as is to be expected at such an event, but there were some good deals to be found, and remember, most sellers are willing to haggle. Here's Alan's stall of Japanese games. He always has an amazing selection, perhaps even too much choice, and has some great prices. Deadpan Robot were there selling their modded Game Boys. They have backlit Game Boys, Game Boy Colors, and these wonderful backlit original Game Boy Advances. I'll definitely be grabbing one of these soon. There was more on offer than just games though. There was a ton of toys and merchandise for sale too. Plenty of toys and action figures. Artwork including replica arcade marquees, posters and prints. And also a fair bit of this bead art, which can look fantastic if it's done well. There were various styles from keyrings to framed pictures. Plenty of clothing was available too, particularly movie and gaming t-shirts. Pocket Pixel Design were there selling their latest controller t-shirt designs. On one stall there was even a replica Infinity Gauntlet. If you're not interested in buying, there was plenty to keep you busy. There were dozens of systems set up for you to play, each with a dedicated CRT or LCD screen. They had almost every home computer and console that you could imagine, including a few handhelds. These expos are a great chance to play obscure consoles that you might not have at home. Kwang from Asobi Tech brought along a few of his rarer systems for people to play too. Every era was represented, going right back to the 70s, right up to last gen systems like the Xbox 360. There are also modern systems to play on too if that's your thing, and LAN PCs set up for multiplayer gaming. There was a small board game and card game area where you could buy and or play them. One of the highlights of these events is the selection of arcade games and pinball tables. It can be pretty hard getting on some of the cabs at these events, but I have to say that I wasn't left waiting too long at this one. Bar one incident with some kids who wouldn't get off a cab, which for the record I blame on the clueless parents, I was only waiting a few minutes to get on them. I bought a new camera right before the event and have absolutely no idea how to use it yet, so apologies for the flicker on the monitors as I had the frame rate set incorrectly. Even the more popular sit-down cabs didn't have huge queues like they normally do. They had Outrun, Space Harrier, the Star Wars cockpit and a two-player Sega Rally down that aisle. Many of the classics from the 80s and 90s were present, creating a superb choice of arcade cabs overall. There were light gun games like Time Crisis and Point Blank, and the classic Nintendo games like Popeye and Donkey Kong. I had a good few goes on Time Pilot, and although I didn't beat my personal best, I was able to set the high score for the weekend, or at least until I left around 2 PM on the Sunday. There are a ton of pins too. I have a funny relationship with pinball. I'm absolutely terrible at them, and half the time I have no idea what I'm doing, but there's nothing quite as alluring as the flashing lights and sounds of a pinball machine. There was again a great selection, including the Addams Family, to which I'm quite partial. When you weren't gaming on something, there were other things to keep you occupied. There were talks from industry veterans and YouTubers. Dan from Slopes Game Room did a live quiz show thing which was really good fun, and there was a cosplay contest, and there were other bits and bobs going on during both days. If you were willing to fork out a bit of extra cash, you could take part in an escape room or watch Nightmare live. I didn't do either, but I did see the Nightmare live show at Play London and thoroughly enjoyed it. There are always exhibitors at these events, including several indie developers showing off their latest games. There were some great looking retro inspired games this year. One that caught my eye in particular was Jarheads, which I immediately thought was a game clearly inspired by Cannon Fodder. Then I saw Cannon Fodder running on an Amiga next to it, so it definitely was. That's one I'll be keeping my eye on. New retro games streaming service Antstream was there too, with a good sized space. Their service is being billed as Netflix for retro games. Tickets were 20 quid for the day, but worked out cheaper for a weekend ticket. Whether this is dear or not, I'll let you decide, as from my experience opinions differ on that. There's a lot to do there, bearing in mind all the arcades, pinballs and consoles are all free play, so personally I think it's reasonable to pay £20 for a day out. The food court area was a little bit disappointing this year. I didn't eat at the event, but beer was £5 for a 330ml can. I'd be happier getting a pint of IPA like they had on offer last time. But all in all, I had a great time at the event, and I'll see you in a second to talk about the social side of the weekend. Hi guys, so yeah, really good fun in Manchester last weekend. Now I've been to every Play Manchester since they started, but they've always been at the Event City, which is kind of outside the city centre. This one was right in the centre, as I said, so it was much easier sort of going out. We stayed at Premier Inn, which was literally opposite the event, opposite the Manchester Central place, and yeah, a little bit tricky to park because there wasn't parking at the hotel, and there was some NCP car parks nearby. They're like 45 quid for 48 hours. So I went on this website, I think it was called yourparkingspace.co.uk, something like that, and I found 48 hours for 12 quid at this hotel up the road. When I got up there on the Friday, there was a bomb scare, so the whole of Piccadilly, like the central bit in Manchester, was locked down by the police, so they wouldn't let me into the car park. So I had to wait around for about 2.5 hours, and then I gave up, and I ended up parking at the Holiday Inn where James from Let's Talk Retro was staying, and I just stuck my car there. But it's like 10 minutes Uber outside of the city centre, but thankfully in Manchester an Uber is like dirt cheap. That 10-minute Uber was like 5 quid or less, so not too bad. So yeah, on the Friday night, after all that palaver, we just ended up really in the Premier Inn bar. A lot of people came down. I won't mention names, I'm going to just mention names altogether of people I saw, be it Friday night, Saturday night or at the event. But yeah, quite a few of us there. I was with 2 mates that we drove up together in my car, and yeah, really good, sort of chilled one. A few people I haven't seen for a long time, a few familiar faces on the Friday night, and just chilled, nothing too crazy, just a few drinks in the bar, and then a reasonably early night. And yeah, then the event on Saturday, and then on Saturday night we ended up going to a couple of different bars, sort of retro-y themed bars. There was one bar that was like movie themed, I can't remember the bloody name of it, but yeah, it was cool. It had like a Star Wars night. We just went there for one drink. Then we went to that NQ64, which is in the Northern Quarter, and it's just full of arcades, and they're not free play, but you buy X amount of tokens, and they're reasonably cheap. It's like 15 tokens for 5 quid, something like that. And yeah, I went there with my mates and Chris, Novabug, and who else was there? Yeah, I went there with my mates and Chris, Novabug, and James, Let's Talk Retro, and we stayed there for a bit. We ended up going back to the Premier Inn again, where quite a few people were there, including Chris from Games You Loved, who kind of persuaded us to go to a casino. And I was it was midnight, I was ready for bed on a Saturday, and thought, yeah, let's go to the casino. And we ended up there till, well, I was there till 4 in the morning. I think some of the guys stayed till 6 until they got kicked out, but it was nice. It wasn't mental, it was like chilled. Played a little bit of roulette and just drank gin and tonic and chatted with the guys, and it was again my mates, James, Chris, and then Chris from Games You Loved, and Darren, King Monkey was there. So that was a nice chilled one. But yeah, I'm just going to run through a list of everybody I saw over the weekend. I hope I don't miss anyone, because it's always risky doing these things. You're going to miss people, but it was a pretty good turnout. I met a lot of people that I hadn't seen before at this thing, so obviously people I've already mentioned, Chris and Overbug and James from Electrical Retro. Erwin Costado came all the way over from Holland. He was there on Friday night. Didn't actually see you at the event, mate. Weirdly, it's a big place and we kind of miss each other, but yeah, really good to see you as always. Steve, Retro and Liam, he was there on Friday night and he was there on the Saturday. Always nice to see him. DJ Slope, Dan and Kim were there on the Friday night as well, and at the event. And like I said in the little look round that you just watched, that Dan did a little quiz thing at the event, which is really good fun actually, which I believe he's uploaded on his channel, so you can go and have a look at that if you want to have a look. Andrew Dalton was there with those guys on the Friday night. Then Matt, My Gamer XP, who I haven't seen for absolutely ages and who hasn't made a video in ages, but I think from some of the things that some of us said on the Friday night, he's kind of thinking about coming back to making videos. So I hope that's true. I hope you do come back to making videos, because we really miss your videos. But great to see him and meet his lady Gemma, who was also really nice. Good chatting to Gemma, chatting to her about photography and what have you. Who else was there? Scott Bailey, aka Scott's Game Asylum, who keeps changing his channel name. But yeah, Scott was up from Oxford Way. He was there on the Friday night as well. Always good to see Scott. And okay, so at the actual event, a few people I have not met before that I met. James Gaming Muso I met for the very first time, so good to meet you. Sorax Space and Maz Gaming I also met for the first time around the food hall, so really good to catch up with you guys finally and meet you. Dan Retrozone was there, and Dan I haven't actually ever met in person, despite the fact that we have talked a lot in the past and have done collabs for each other's channels and what have you, but never actually met Dan, so that was brilliant meeting Dan. Simon Locke was there. Simon Locke you may or may not know, but he is an absolute wizard with hardware, so if you need any hardware mods done, Simon is the man to go to. Quang was there, and you might have seen Quang mentioned twice in the footage just a minute ago, because he had a little section of his retro collection there, some really rare stuff, and he was also doing his Pocket Pixel design, selling some t-shirts. Who else we got? We've got Andrew back off his show. It's always a pleasure to see Andrew. He was up again from Oxford. Saw him several times during the day and in the evenings. We have Neil, Retro Man Cave. And when I saw Neil, he gave me some badges. So what we got? I'm officially, is that going to focus? Probably not. Oh, there you go. So I'm officially a cave dweller with my little cave dweller badge, and also a little Retro Man Cave badge. So thank you, Neil, for those. It's always a pleasure to see Neil, such a gentleman, always very well presented is Neil. Chris from Games You Loved, I mentioned. Chris, top guy, met him a few times, but yeah, had a wicked time with him. And Darren, King Monkey, who I also mentioned, always a good time with those guys. Brilliant time on a Saturday night. They introduced me to Ryan from Numbskull. He kind of does the PR for Numbskull, I believe, and he had a little bag of goodies, and I pulled out this pair of Atari socks, or actually 3 pairs of Atari socks, so thank you, Ryan, for that. Go and check out Ryan on Twitter, because Numbskull are doing some really cool stuff. They do those little mini arcade Pac-Man arcades, and they've got some other ones coming out soon, so keep an eye out on those, because they're really awesome. Bex from Trista Bites I met for the first time, and she was with Dan Oddpod, who I don't believe I've met either, although again, chatted to those guys numerous times, just never had the chance to meet them, so really nice to meet those guys, although it was kind of brief. It'd be nice to catch up a bit more next time. Sarah Octavius Kitten I saw milling about with Pete. I actually saw Pete beforehand, Nostalgia Nerd. Never met him before, but he did let me use some footage around Christmas, so I kind of stopped by his stall to say thanks for that. And then I saw him and Sarah a little bit later on. Richard, Top Hat Gaming Man, and Lady Decade. Met them and their little kid. They were there with their new little kiddo. Always nice to see those guys. Really nice guys. Had a very brief chat. It'd be nice to catch up a bit more, but they were getting mobbed quite a bit by chatting to various people. But yeah, really nice to talk to those guys as always. Richard, I believe, was there on the Friday night as well. Who was, oh yeah, Nintendo Wii, who his channel is again a channel that changes name quite often, but his channel is currently called Retro Break, and I didn't see him at the event, but I saw him at the what's it called, NQ64 bar on the Saturday night, and kind of went and said hello to him. Nice meeting him. Jack, Liverpool Retro Gamer. Jack is a top guy. I mentioned it in one of my shout out videos recently, and yeah, really nice young lad, really friendly. He came over and said hello, and he was with his brother, who I believe was called Keith, maybe. But yeah, nice to see those guys. Nice to meet Jack finally. And we have Ravi from Retro Hour Podcast. I saw he was kind of quite busy, and you know, he does his talks and everything, and he kind of hosts the panels and stuff. But I did see him briefly and have a quick chat. Kieran from Laird's Lair, I saw. Had a good chat with him. I believe when I was one of the times I was playing Time Pilot and kind of in that area, and we had a little chat about the event and this, that and the other. Gary Pinkett and his other half I saw as well at the Premier Inn, I think I saw. I don't know if I saw you at the event, Gary, but yeah, always nice to see Gary. And then Andy at Arcade Club. I had a B&O, you can probably see in the background, spoiler alert, I bought a B&O MX4000, which has replaced my 8000, because my 8000 is now going to the new Arcade Club in Leeds, which Andy is opening in, I believe, a matter of weeks. So I kind of met Andy at the event, and then we went to my car and did the exchange when I was leaving, so he took my MX8000. But yeah, top guy Andy. And then traders, quite a few traders that I know to sort of say hello to, but I don't know who they are. But traders that I do know is Alan McCluskey, who I mentioned in the footage. Always nice to see Alan. And then people from the Facebook group saw Chris Richardson and Nathan Russell, who are always at these things, and yeah, really nice guys. And Chris actually got me into the Facebook retro groups, because I met Chris through Reddit, and he was the one that told me about, oh, there's all these retro Facebook groups, blah 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 blah. And then years later, here I am on YouTube. And yeah, a couple of other people said hello. People who were doing stalls, or people just walking around, said hello. They watched the channel, or they recognised me from Facebook or whatever. Thank you so much to those people who came to say hello. Never be afraid to come and say hello to me if you see me. I know some people are like, you know, do come and say hello, and then you say hello and they're like, you know, leave me alone. That's not the case with me. I'm, you know, overjoyed when people come and say hello and say nice things about the channel, or they want to talk about retro or whatever it is. Come and say hi. Sorry, I just had a terrible coughing fit there. But yeah, people I missed. Samuel Victor, aka Pixels Limited. Didn't see you at the event, mate. We completely missed each other. Same with the artist Mark Flynn. Matt Phillips from Big Evil Corp, who created Tanglewood. I heard you were there, but did not see you. And then Simon from Super Nerds UK, who I subsequently saw on Twitter that he was there, and didn't see him. But there might have been a few other people that I missed, but it's a big place. Shame we didn't bump into each other, but we will, I'm sure, next time. So I think that's it, guys. And Blackpool is in October. I'm all booked a hotel, got my tickets. Blackpool is the best social of the whole year. The Friday night at Blackpool you cannot top, for meeting YouTubers, having a chat, just a great night. So I'm hoping I'll see you all there, especially anyone I missed at the last one. And thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.